To kick things off, please welcome on stage Julian Gordon, Vice President of Asia Pacific Linux Foundation. He'll be talking about how Hyperledger began and how it is now gaining more and more users in the corporate and enterprise sector. Please put your hands together for Julian.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here, and I loved the talk beforehand. And I think, the MAS. We've worked with the MAS on Ubin, and Ubin is definitely one of the leading central bank technology programs. And in terms of trade finance, I think it identified trade finance and a number of others, and those definitely are some of the leading areas. So today, I'm going to take you through Hyperledger, which is the open source project of the Linux Foundation, and I'm going to take you through some of the things that we're doing, some of the projects that we have, and then I'm going to take you through some use cases. So, what is Hyperledger? Who is Hyperledger? Well, we are an open source community, and we're a community of communities. We have many different projects. We're part of the Linux Foundation. The Linux Foundation is famous for managing Linux, which is the number one, I think it's 50 or to 80%, people give me different numbers, of the compute that Linux runs in the world. We are the Linux Foundation. We are the blockchain project within the Linux Foundation. We are global, and we are cross-industry, and I think about 20% is here in Asia Pacific. I am the VP of Asia Pacific. I'm based in Hong Kong. It's where I was born, and I've lived for many years. I started this journey about 3 years ago, just after Hyperledger was started. Hyperledger was started by about 30 companies, the JP Morgans, JP Morgan, IBM, Intel, Digital Assets, lots of other different companies got together and said, we do not want to develop this open source technology on our own. We want to do this as a team. And we have now over 275 members. We have over 16 projects, and we're just growing from strength to strength. And as I said, I spend a lot of my time in China, and we are pretty well the dominant permissioned blockchain in China. So just to reiterate, when I say we're open source, we are 100% open source. Other people may take a technology. We're on Apache 2, so IBM, Accenture, SAP, Alibaba, Tencent, many companies will take our technology and then wrap it around themselves. But you can always go to wiki.hyperledger.org and get everything gratis. You can get all the code, you can get in a collaborative environment, you can talk to the developers. And the one thing that we are good at Linux Foundation is creating vibrant projects. And when I say a vibrant project, the key thing for an open source project is it's not just one company developing it. It's not throwing something over to GitHub, which may die. It's trying to get a vibrant community. So I'll talk about Fabric. Originally, it was IBM, famously, that contributed it, but now hundreds of different companies are working on that technology. And we have many people working on technology. And actually, Linux Foundation, we have Kubernetes, if you know that. We have CNCF. Pretty well every core technology, software-defined networks, is all within the Linux Foundation. And key for you who are developers, I was told this is a developer audience, but I think it's more mixed than that. For developers, this is a duocracy. So those who control the projects and the way the projects are managed and the way the projects are developed are those that get involved. Those that do, it's a duocracy. So we're very business focused in terms of the kind of technology and also used for other social purposes, but this is very much a duocracy. So if you get involved, it's those that get involved. You can't buy influence of our technical community. It's a true open source environment. Just a quick thing, our focus has been what you would call permission blockchain. I think I'm in a blockchain conference, so I think people would know, but obviously we all started with Bitcoin back in 2008, which was, amazing. Satoshi, we don't know who she was, but obviously an amazing person. And then, or group of people. Then we had the genius of Vitalik, of the One World Computer, and Ethereum, and then all the other spin-offs of that, and other variants of that kind of permissionless technology. And then we have permission technology, which is different in terms as that all the parties are known. So there's no anonymous parties in it. It's a different model, and there's different ways of playing with it. And in the ecosystem today, I think we kind of coexist. I think maybe there may be a kind of meshing of those two together, and I'll talk about that a little bit. We have taken an Ethereum project. Consensus did contribute a project to us, which it was basically works on the Ethereum mainnet. So we have a more permissionless technology also. And the key thing also to remember is we have no coin. We are just about the software. And if you look in our kind of software world, there's three types of people. There's those that write standards. We're not a standards body. There's those that manage those standards and regulate those standards. And there's those that write the code. We're firmly in the writing the code. So we are about writing code, and the best code that you can get, because it's developed by the global community. And basically the concept of open source is that all of us developing technology together are smarter than any one of us developing technology together. So let's do this as a community. So as I said, 3.5 years we've been going. I'll go quickly through some of the technology. We have 14 different code bases. I think that's actually out of date. We have 5 in production release that can be used today. We have 275 members, including 50 from China, and I'll quickly go through the China membership. But we have everyone, a real diverse membership, from the largest companies in the world to a two-man, two-person, two-lady startup, right? We have many active working groups and meetups. We have meetups in pretty well every city in the world, and everybody is welcome to join. We're very open, diverse. Everyone can come and join Hyperledger community. This is what's called our Hyperledger greenhouse. So the concept of this is that we have all our code bases. We're a project to project, all work under the same governance process. They have the same licensing, and if you know about open source, licensing is key. We're Apache 2. With Apache 2, you can just take that code, you can put it in your own code, do other things with it. That's not a problem. There's no hook back. It's a very good license, so we use Apache 2 license, and we have many different projects. I'll quickly go through them. So we have the most famous. Has anyone heard of Fabric? So Hyperledger, yes, I think a lot of people have heard of Fabric. That's probably the most famous, originally contributed by IBM. Now, as I said, being developed by many, many people. And that is a de facto standard in China. I think every bank, many organizations. I was at the Singapore FinTech event. I was going around the booths saying, what do you use? And I think generally it's Ethereum, and the key ones are Ethereum and Hyperledger, Hyperledger Fabric, and some Hyperledger Sawtooth, and maybe a few more other ones, specific ones. But those are the general trend. So Hyperledger Fabric is very popular. And the great thing of working in an open source community, I wake up every day and I see an alert. I have a Google Alerts, and I found out the other day NASA is using our technology, and then I find out some Bangladeshi thing is working all over the world. We see different people using our technology, and we don't even know it, but they're doing some great things with it, and we hope they actually contribute back too. Then we have the other one is Sawtooth, which is was contributed by Intel. This has called POET, Proof of Elapsed Time Consensus. Actually, it has a very pluggable consensus. So Sawtooth is also very well known. We have Burrow, which is for those who write in Solidity contracts. That is an EVM. So if you're on Ethereum and you've written Solidity contracts, we actually have the community have actually taken Burrow and they've placed that on top of Fabric, on top of Sawtooth. So you can actually write Solidity Solidity smart contract code on top of Fabric and on top of Sawtooth. Aroa, you should have a look at that. That's more mobiles. Actually, the Bank of Thailand has, the Bank of Cambodia has in production today a payment system for the retail system in Cambodia. And Indy is also self-sovereign identity. So we have the self-sovereign identity, the sovereign community contributed that, and that has now become a code. And that is one of the hottest subjects, is around self-sovereign identity. And this is used in many use cases, and I'll go through that case studies later. And then we have a bunch of other ones. I don't think I'll go in much detail. We've got Aries as a wallet. Ursa is cryptography. Caliper, contributed by Huawei, is around benchmarking. So many, many different projects. And Grid was contributed by Cargill. And Target, that is a supply chain toolkit or framework. So lots of code. wiki.hyperledger.org. You can get a Linux ID for free. You can go and have a look at that, and you can play with it and use it to your wish. And we also have a labs. So I mentioned that actually because we have a lot of interoperability. Interoperability is a hot subject. I was on the panel at the FinTech event. We have Quilt, which does interledger protocol, which is a standard that's existed since 2004 for atomic swaps. So that's a great project. And in the labs, which we have, which is like kind of our seed, Accenture just contributed their frameworks for interoperability. So that's interoperability between homogeneous chains and heterogeneous different chains. And at of course, some point, how does an Ethereum link in with maybe a permission chain? And Beizhu at the end. We were with, last week I was in China with Joe Lubin and team, and they have contributed a consensus project, which is now, you can see there, Beizhu. So we do have a project that can access the mainnet and Ethereum. And that is, I think, very exciting. We see ourselves as the neutral place, country neutral, vendor neutral. It's a place that people can come and develop together. So we see more and more projects, accelerating the number of projects, and in our labs that are coming, that people can develop in a safe place to develop together. So who's using what? There doesn't seem to be any Gartner or IDC report, but this is probably one of the best measures I've seen. This is from Forbes magazine, taking the top 50 organizations they believe in industry in this place. And as you can see, it's actually quite US focused, but it did have Alibaba in it. And you can see the 32 of them were using Hyperledger Fabric. Sometimes as Hyperledger Fabric, other times they're using IBM Blockchain or Google or DDCC or Oracle Blockchain or Samsung NextLedger, but underneath that is actually Fabric. And then we have Ethereum. A number of people Ethereum. I don't know whether that was public or enterprise Ethereum, but obviously we have a project there now, and we thought, it's very exciting. Corda, so R3 is actually a member of Hyperledger, one of the founding members. Quorum, JP Morgan is also one of our members, so that's a great Ethereum project, and we have Indian Sawtooth. So that's the kind of mix that we see. Every platform globally around the world has Hyperledger Fabric on it, so the Googles, the IBMs, the Oracles, the SAPs in China, who I work mainly, the BAT, the Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, plus people like JD, they all have some kind of blockchain as a service. So it's very easy to run it, spin up a node, very easy to use this technology, so as everyone uses it. And they all normally have some kind of Ethereum as well, BAS, or maybe something of their own flavor. But Fabric is one of the thread that's in all, right? So very exciting. And actually, Salesforce is not Fabric. Salesforce actually has using Sawtooth. All right, so we have community working groups. wiki.hyperledger.org. You can go and see these. We have our technical steering committee that makes all the technical decisions. You can go and watch this live. You can get involved. We have an architecture working group, identity working group. I'm not going to go into those details, but please, if those are your interest areas, go there. You can always approach me through LinkedIn or directly, and I can guide you to all this. But this is all available. It's all recorded. Everything we do is 100% open. Anyone can attend the conference calls, the Fabric conference. Everyone can attend it. It's completely open. We also have interest groups, because obviously the reason for technology is not for academic interest or for our entertainment. It's for business and social outcome. And we have a bunch of different community interest groups. Supply chain, as we heard before, is one of the hot areas. Actually, the Bank of England is the chair of that. Anyone can attend it. It has all different kind of trade finance organizations involved in that. It has a bit of a problem with time zones. I really like to do something in this part of the world. And we also have social impact, capital markets. So we talked about securitization of assets. That is big. They're just about to launch, actually, there's one Hyperledger member here launching a bond where they split up a bond into smaller parts, so not just institutional investors have access to certain bonds. And we have a lot of securitization. I'll talk about that in a minute. Healthcare is another hot subject. But yes, go in there. We just provide the platform. The community uses it, right? They have a chat, they have an email list, and they have a Zoom account. So you get together, you can come and get involved. You can get, there's many ways that we do these things. Some of them have a way of electing a leadership, but it's all on a volunteer basis. We also do, just for your information, anyone speaks Putonghua, we do have a China technical working group in this part of the world to help bridge the technical working group around the world with China. We do have an India chapter, and at some point we may do an ASEAN chapter as well, so we help pull all those meetups. We have meetups in every city, we try and pull those together. So we provide the platform. Actually, Hyperledger, I'm a Hyperledger staff, there's less than 20 of us. So we use the community. We're a non-profit, so we help do that. The cornerstone of all technology has to be training. It's about the developers and obviously the people who can envision and use that technology, but we have training, free training, all a bunch of stuff, EDX.org, and we have set up this thing called a certified admin. We perceive one of the big issues will be administration of a network. As we know, blockchain is not just about administrating your own data center or even your cloud infrastructure. This is going to be a multiplicity of different cloud infrastructure. So we do provide a certification course, and we're continuing on that. We also do have Hyperledger training partners who provide their own courses, right? So, and some of our members provide their own course. But this is the certification course that we've put together. We also, what we've done, because we want to create, this is enterprise grade, the technology that we all want in blockchain has to be enterprise grade, has to be mission critical, has to have all those abilities, scalability, make sure that the technology is up there and runs for businesses, for individuals, for whoever is developing that technology. So we have done a certified service provider program, and we just announced it. So Accenture, IBM, you would expect, Ant Financial, which all the Alibaba blockchain groups are now into Ant Financial, which, if you don't know, is the largest, I think it's the largest market cap fintech in the world. We have Beijing PSA, who are out of Beijing, who are very much in the security area, and Chainyard, who are in North Carolina and in Kerala. So that's just the start. We're going to see a lot more doing that, and we're welcome for anybody who wants to become a certified solution provider. We have great diversity. These are our premium members. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but the thing I really wanted to point out is that we're not just banks. We're not just the traditional Intel technologies. We have Daimler there. We have Airbus. We have all kinds of organizations. We also have the top universities. Monetary Authority at Singapore is our member. The Bank of England's our member. We have charity groups. We have Zhejiang University, Peking University, Cambridge University, and we work with all universities around the world. And actually, for them, it's free. China, Zhongguo, so I thought I'd just share with you because that seems to be a hot issue. Xi Jinping did make that announcement 10 days ago. The reason I know that is because my phone was sitting on my desk and my WeChat started buzzing, and it hasn't stopped since. So China really, we've always done a lot in China. As you can see, we have all the Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, lots of the amazing startups that exist here and also in Singapore. I'm always amazed by the entrepreneurship that exists within China and in this part of the world and everywhere. But it really is. We have so many great companies. I could go through. There's a use case and many production cases within all those. I don't have time today. I'm happy to go through this with other people. We have a lot of this material available online. But I'm going to go through now. I think that's my next slide. I'm going to go through some use cases because I think that's really, that's where the rubber hits the road. And what we have seen is we have things. We started off proof of concepts about 3 years ago, and obviously people are in a different journey depending on their desire to adapt new technology, or their need to adapt new technology. And then it went to kind of pilots. And last year we start seeing very large production systems in place, and that has just accelerated. We now have some production systems that have been in place for nearly 2 years. Actually, maybe some are over 2 years. So we see significant take up. This is trade finance. I'll go through these very quickly. We.trade. This is the banks, including HSBC, all the big banks in Europe, but it's within the EU. And they are creating a system to enable trading documents and their clients to connect, to make things more efficient, to use that one common face to their customers, right? This is China. So in China, we have seen all the banks. I don't know if you know much about the Chinese banking system, but this is for letters of credit. I don't know if everyone knows. A letter of credit is a future promise of payment against some kind of delivery, a bill of lading, a warehouse certificate. So it's between a buyer and a seller. It used to be a very cumbersome process. You're in two parts of China. You have two different banking relationships, so they provide a letter of credit between them. So what the banks, and before they used SWIFT domestically, they used a bunch of different telexes, a very inefficient system. So the banks have got together. This chain is Minqing Bank, China CITIC Bank, Bank of China Sunning Bank, and they developed a blockchain system, and they now can share documents, and they can share stuff in a trusted way. And this did, I think on the first day, did 1 billion renminbi, which is about, I think, 150 million US dollars worth of letters of credit on the first day. And we have many, many different, I'll go through this quickly. I'm watching my clock here. Same with China. This is another one, CCB, second largest bank in the world. If you see in the press, they did 50 billion US dollars worth of letters of credit already. It's been over a year. And other trade finance, eVisible, they're doing supply chain finance. So I'm going to look at a little bit at supply chain, but really where I think, which is very hot in terms of traceability, origination, all the important things associated with the supply chain, but where supply chain hits finance, and that is supply chain finance, part of trade finance, I think is the low-hanging fruit. If you can expose the accounts receivables between the two different organizations, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, down a supply chain, you give the ability for someone in Tier 4 who has he's meant to be paid in 30 days. He has a piece of paper that he's meant to receive in 30 days, but he takes it to the bank, and the bank says, "Oh, I don't know if I can trust you. You've got a bad credit rating. You sure you're going to get paid in 30 days? Are you sure that we can trust that?" But if you can expose on a blockchain the whole supply chain, and you can expose their ERP systems, and banks can see that, the bank will say, "Yes, actually, I can trust that. I know that's connected there to there, and that's connected to HP." I used to work for HP. I try to do it there, right, down the supply chain. So these are in production today, especially places where we have challenges with credit risk. We see this in India and in China. And also another thing, a warehouse. If you have, let's say you're a treasurer of a bank and you want to borrow some overnight money, you can't use the assets that are in your supply chain sometimes. So let's say you have 2 tons of aluminium sitting in a warehouse in Kunming or in Singapore, which is worth $2 million, and you want to borrow $2 million overnight. You can't use that as collateral. But using blockchain, you can prove that that is there, using IoT devices and other things. You can prove that that aluminium is sitting in that warehouse, so the treasurer now can say to his bank, "Look, I have collateral. Can you give me a better interest rate?" So these are immediate paybacks, providing better funding, more efficient supply chains, more efficient industries, hopefully for you as the consumer, a better price, a more competitive industry. DLT ledgers, they're based here. They do go across a country. All those I said were domestic. These go across a border, and they're doing trading within ASEAN, and they've done over $1 billion worth of trades. I would have a look at DLT ledgers. I can't spend much time on it, but they are a great Singaporean company, and they've done some very exciting things in this space. And they work with DBS and a number of other big banks here to provide funding. And it's a win-win. Traders trading across this network, it's more efficient. The end buyer knows more about transparency about the goods he's getting, and the banks know more about what's happening, so they can provide a better rate and a more efficient service. Everyone wins. Food Trust, Walmart. I haven't got much time, so I'm just going to talk very quickly. Walmart, they did lots of use cases, and now they're in production. They took tracking of a mango. This is the famous proof of concept. So if you're in a store and you take a mango and you go to the manager, say, where did this come from? Before, he used to get on a phone. It would take up to 7 days to 2 weeks. Now, with a blockchain network in place, he can do it in 2.2 seconds. Now, is that useful? Well, maybe for provenance, so you know that, especially in China, that you know this apple isn't a Fuji apple. It says it's a Fuji apple, but it's an apple that's been painted red that comes from somewhere else, right? So provenance is important. But for them, it's all about food scares and being able to remove stuff off shelves. So if you have an E. coli scare, they have to remove all the green vegetables. That destroys whole industries. In this case, if we know where the farm came from, we can remove the stuff from that specific farm. So it's all about precision in the supply chain. So this is a long story. There's more information on our website. We've written this story up completely. Sustainability. This is also a supply chain around making sure that we don't have blood diamonds. And the other one is around materials. This is around tantalum, which is something that's in your phone, and your battery in your phone, or a battery in your car. And that can be mined in Rwanda, or it can be mined in Congo. And Rwanda is good. Congo is not so good. So they're being able to track that, make sure that you know when you get the product that it actually is the real stuff. And I'll show you that quickly. I'm going through this quickly because I have very little time. But if you look down there, it says, and I'll read it. So you have mining Rwanda, refines in Macedonia, manufactured in the US, shopped from the US, shipping from the US, final assembly in China, and distribution to consumer. All down that supply chain, they use QR codes, facial recognition, and they know that the product and IoT devices is going down the chain. So when you're in China, you know that that came from Rwanda, and no one inserted illegal stuff that goes against our sustainable goals, and we do not want to have in our phone or in a car, from an ethical perspective, stuff that was used, mined in a non-ethical fashion, or there weren't any working rights for those individuals, because part of a sustainable, we want everyone in the world to have good working rights and good working conditions. Same in diamonds. I'm not going to go through this. This is very interesting, legal chain. So in China, you have internet courts. So in China, in Beijing, there's a Beijing Internet Court, there's a Hangzhou Internet Court, there's notaries, there's a bunch of legal organizations that are involved in the court system. So when you do an internet, you put up your documents, maybe those are some kind of evidence, you put those up on the internet, and then it goes through the process, and it goes to the court system. But the concern is that the document that you put up there may be a different document that it ends up at the court, right? So what they've done is that when you put your documents up, they're hashed. And it's hashed. It's a permission, but it's all publicly available. You can look at this URL, and you can see 50 million hashes, and they're associated with the evidence that's been used in the Hangzhou court and in the Beijing court. And this is spreading across China. This is a great use case. Very simple to use, but very effective, and creates that transparency for the people using the court system. Healthcare. It's a very large US one. I'm not going to go through that now. I'm going to talk about this one quickly, because this is in Xianggang, in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, I work for companies like HP, I work for small companies, I work for Cisco and Sun, and whenever we had to do a health, when I went to the doctor, I would go to a doctor that probably wasn't on the list, because where I live doesn't have one of the doctors on the list with the insurance, right? So I would go, let's say I have to get some pills. I'll get a receipt from the doctor. I then have to take that receipt to my office. I have to fill a form in. I'd have to give it to an administrator, who then gives it to somebody else, who then gives it to AIG or someone, right? And then they say, oh, actually, you got it wrong. And back it comes again, right? So it's a very cumbersome, paper-driven system, because there's no trust. So what they've done here is they've created a blockchain between the 200 medical providers, MediconSen, which is a startup, small startup in Hong Kong, and 2,000 medical insurance clients, all with Blue Cross, and they've tied those together. So when you do your claim now, you have an app, and you can just do it on your app at the medical practitioners. So that is remarkably a simple idea, but it helps everyone. It helps the employee, it helps the insurance company, because there's a lot of fraud in this place, and it helps the medical practitioner, because he gets his money and he knows he's going to get his money, right? So and everyone's happy. Great system. I'm actually going to finish here. This is another one. Have a look at this. This is identity. We talked about sovereign identity. In British Columbia, they have done that with companies. So companies in British Columbia, I think there's 529,000 companies. They can put their proofs on their own point of the ledger using self-sovereign identity for government services. So if you're a restaurant, you may have your drinking license, you may have your license for health and safety or fire license. You can have those all up on your own ledger. And every time you want to show that to somebody, you don't have to go back to prove to the fire department. You can just use those proofs, and they're tied back. So that is a very, very good use case. And also, we have this. This is actually, Indy is one of the few kind of technologies that is very GDPR friendly. And that's it. So thank you very much. We are an open source community. Anybody can use our technology. We are free to play. You can also become a member if you want to get more involved in other ways in terms of marketing and getting involved in more kind of sponsoring what we're doing. But it's definitely free. Developers, get involved. Talk to me. We're very open. Great community. Join our meetups here. Anywhere. Get involved. I'm in LinkedIn. You can always approach me and I can point you to different places. And in the end, we're all part of the same blockchain family, and it's great to be here. Thank you very much.